So let's figure out how to name these acids and bases. So you should be able to give the formula if I tell you the name of the acid or base, or if I give you the formula, you should be able to tell me the name. So going back and forth between names and formulas. Let's start off with our bases because this should be a review. So bases are salts, and we know that when we name a salt, we name the metal, and then we name the anion or the polyatomic ion. And hydroxide is a polyatomic ion, OH minus, and so all we do is name the metal, and then we tack on the name hydroxide. So this very first one, NaOH, this would be sodium hydroxide. And the next one, this is potassium hydroxide. And last but not least, this is calcium hydroxide. Now, calcium is an alkaline earth metal, and so it has a +2 charge. So that's why I need to have 2 of those hydroxides with it to make it neutral. You also might see transition metals acting as a base. So for example, CuOH2. So this is copper. Now copper is a transition metal. It can have an oxidation number of a +1 or a +2. So let's look and see which one do we have. Well, notice I have to have 2 hydroxides. This is going to be just like that calcium. So my copper is going to have a +2 charge. Now because copper can also be a +1, in the name you have to tell which one you have. So we have copper 2 hydroxide. So I didn't have to put the oxidation number and these up here, and that's because group 1 and 2 are always a +1 or a +2. So we don't have to tell everybody because it's either a +1 or it's a +2. All right, so now let's name our acids. So naming a binary acid, and a binary acid has 2 elements. So it'll have a hydrogen and it will also have a nonmetal. And it follows this form, hydro, and then the root word of the nonmetal, and then ic on the end. And I really don't memorize it this way. I just memorize HCl. So HCl is hydrochloric acid. So if I have only 2 elements, I know it's going to be named just like hydrochloric acid. So let's look at our example. So HBr would be hydrobromic acid. And you can see that that bromine, we just use that root word in the name. And then HF would be hydrofluoric acid. So this is how you name acids that only have 2 elements. So they pattern after hydrochloric acid. And I'm hopeful that HCl you already know is hydrochloric acid because we use it so much in the lab. Now for ternary acids, you need to know the rule and the pattern. So there will be a series of acids, and ternary acids are also called oxyacids, and that is because they have oxygen in them. They'll have a hydrogen and an oxygen and then a nonmetal. And this is the rule that you need to know. It's based off the most common acid of the series, and so the most common acid will always end in ic. If you add 1 more oxygen to the formula, then you call it per-ic. And if it's 1 less oxygen, then it will end in us. So the name gives you a clue of how many oxygens it has. And if you have 2 less oxygens than this ic form, again, we're always referring back to the ic form, then it will be hypo-us acid. So this is the rule. So per-ic, ic, us, hypo-us. 1 more oxygen, and then the common form that we compare everything to, 1 less oxygen, and then 2 less oxygens. So on these problems in the homework and also on the test, I will always give you a clue. So on this one, I give you what the ic form is. So this is the most common form. So this is chloric acid, HClO3. So then if I know that, then what is perchloric acid? Well, that per and that ic means 1 more oxygen. So I just add 1 more oxygen, HClO4. And let's look at the next one. This one ends in OUS. What does that mean? It means 1 less oxygen. And again, we always compare it to the ic form. So that would be HCl, and then 3 minus 1 is 2. And then hypochlorous, that means there's 2 less oxygens. So HClO. Again, comparing it to the most common form. So 3 minus 2 would give me 1. Now, not all elements or nonmetals make all the acids in this series. A good example of this is sulfur. So H2SO4 is sulfuric acid. And the only other acid it makes in the series is sulfurous acid. What's the formula for sulfurous acid? Well, sulfurous means 1 less oxygen. So H2SO3 is sulfurous. Now, elements in the same family, they are going to have the same formulas. So they'll have the same most common form. So here's an example. Chloric acid is HClO3. What is bromic acid? Well, bromine is in the same family as chlorine, so it would be HBrO3. So if it's in the same family, it's going to have the same pattern. So what that means, what is perbromic? Well, perbromic means 1 more oxygen, so HBrO4. And bromous, us means 1 less, so HBrO2. Again, we're comparing it to that ick form. And then hypobromous, would be HBrO. And then hydrobromic. Well, hydrobromic, what's left? So remember, hydrobromic, it sounds like hydrochloric. What is hydrochloric acid? HCl. So this one is HBr. So don't forget your binary acid, how you name it. And this one, I won't give you an example. You should just know it. You should know that form. So if it has hydro at the beginning and ick at the end, you know it's just 2 elements. Let's look at this one. So if I told you that H2SO4 is sulfuric, so there's your clue, then what is selenous? Well, selenium is in the same family as sulfur, so it's going to have the same pattern. But look, they're asking for the us, so that means 1 less oxygen. So this would be H2, so the hydrogen number doesn't change. Se, because now it's selenium, and then O3. I should have 1 less oxygen. That's what that us means. And then that's all that there is for, so sulfuric and selenous, sulfuric and selenic, that series, there's only 2 of them. So, but again, if it's in the same family, then they'll pattern after each other. And one more way that you can name acids is that's to look up the polyatomic ion, because there's a polyatomic ion in the acid. And the rule is if the polyatomic ion ends in 8, then the acid becomes an ending in ick. And if the ion ends in ite, then it becomes the acid ending in us. Let me give you an example of this. So let's look at the polyatomic ion sulfate, so SO4 minus 2. If I were to make an acid out of this, how many hydrogen ions would I add? Well, each hydrogen ion is a +1, and look at that charge there. I have a +2. So I'm going to have 2 hydrogens to make that neutral. So my acid is going to be H2SO4. So notice now that it's neutral. And let's go to name it. So my 8 is going to go to ick. So sound this out. If I just cross out 8 and put ick, sulfic kind of sounds weird, but sulfuric sounds better. So a lot of times if you say it out loud, you can figure it out. So this one is sulfuric. So in this case, we use the whole name of the nonmetal and just tack on that ick. So again, 8 becomes ick, and we add enough hydrogens to make it neutral. Let's look at the next one. So we have sulfite. How many hydrogens will I have to add to make it neutral? And the answer is 2, because each of them is 1. So +2 would cancel out that -2. So this one's going to be H2SO3. And let's do the name. So ite goes to us. So I'm going to cross out that ite and put us. And I already know my formula is H2SO3. And now I would name this. Sulfus sounds weird, but sulfurous sounds better. So that's what it is. So this sulfuric acid and sulfurous acid. And again, it's named after that polyatomic ion. So if you have a polyatomic ion chart, this is a good way to name your acids.